Hi, everybody. Welcome back and welcome to this episode of Raise the Vibe with Liz. I'm your host, Liz Peterson, and today I'm hosting Ananda Bena-Weber, and I'm super excited to have her. Let me tell you a little bit about her by reading her bio. Ananda is a versatile artist who performs throughout the world in the areas of theater, dance, film, television, and commercials. She is an accomplished voiceover artist and creates her own finished product spots in her home studio. Ananda provides workshops and training, bringing dancers and actors together to create work that is a conversation, exchange, and a synthesis of natures. She is an adjunct professor at Marymount Manhattan College and a teaching artist for the Dance Theater of Harlem. Her recent solo work, Fancifool, recently won Best Variety Show and was a Critic's Choice pick at the United Solo Theater Festival in New York City. And her CV is quite impressive if you go online and check her out at anandabenaweber.com. Ananda, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
So great to have you. A friend reached out and said that you were on island performing your show, Fancifool. So I wanted to have you come and just share your experience, what the night was like, not only, the one performance that you did over the weekend, but also that intimate performance that you did at O Space on Vashon. So let's kind of jump right in. And why don't you share a little bit about yourself and how you ended up on this path of creativity that you're on?
Well, I my background it's kind of a long story how I ended up becoming an interdisciplinary performing artist. My background is in classical ballet. Actually, my whole family is in dance. So I grew up. My mother is a ballerina, and my father is a tap dancer. And so I grew up sort of in those worlds, and I branched out into different kinds of dance, and then also classical acting. And I found that uh, the mime, there's a whole pantomime sort of curriculum that you learn in classical ballet, and I learned that that actually is connected to a lot of clown techniques, and so I started doing European style clown techniques, and then I went to graduate school. This is really abridging the whole thing. I went to graduate school and was studying interdisciplinary arts, and that's where I started coming up with my own interdisciplinary solo work, which combines dancing, singing, mime, and clown. And I do different portraits of people. Basically, they're all based on people that I met on the street, and all of my interdisciplinary solo work is about. It's all funny. It tries to be funny and entertaining, hopefully, but it's really the heart of it is how we can love each other. I say love each other in spite of our differences, but maybe love each other for our differences is a better way of putting it. Because I've been noticing that especially in American culture right now, there's so much sort of divisive rhetoric that's happening to us, especially from the social media and technology, using the phones and stuff like that. We're being divided, and my hope is that we can come together and be one people, and really, no matter where we live in the country, to accept each other as we are, basically, to learn more about each other and to realize that we have more in common than we do, than we, the things that set us apart are just not as important. And the idea behind the kind of interdisciplinary solo work that I do is I play many, many characters. My original work, Fancifool, has 12 characters. The one that I just did, Fancifool Sex Edition, that has 14. And if I do it right, when you're watching it, you forget that it's one actor who's doing it, and you start to see the characters as being different. But then, if you can sort of remember in the middle of that, that these characters that seem different from each other are actually literally the same person underneath. I think that's a wonderful way that we can try to look at other people. You know, we seem different on the outside, but in our hearts, we're really the same. We're really connected by love. So that's
I
the
love
idea.
that. I watched your TED Talk, and your TED Talk was on community.
Yeah, that was a little while ago. Yeah, so that was the theme of that TED event was community, and that's right up my alley. So I did it community highlighting unity. And it was, I think, 4 different clown characters. And what I like to do is sort of do characters that are saying things that you don't necessarily expect. So there's a former Soviet Russian in the TED Talk who's actually talking about the virtues of democracy, and then there's a conservative Republican business owner from the South who's talking about the importance of loving one another as a Christian, and also the importance of engaging in philanthropy, and that's as a way for wealthy people to help the little guy, right? So and that those are based also on real people. So the important thing, I think, is
Yeah.
to remember not to stereotype and judge each other, based on assumptions that we make about each other,
Right.
because there are plenty of people who care about other people,
Yeah,
and
we
who
tend to
want
put
them all to
people
go
in a
better.
box. Yeah, we tend to put people in a box, and not everybody fits in that same box just because we've labeled them as such.
Right. Yeah, and we're so one thing that really bothers me about the kind of social media and advertising brain that we kind of have, which is like, give it to me in a 7-second soundbite. Well, can you give it to me in one sentence? Can you sum it up? The thing is that when we keep sort of summing things up and we don't allow the details and the nuances of things in, you know, that I think that really breeds a lot of stereotyping,
Mhm.
slogans and sort of branding and all that stuff. And I'd like to kind of get back to a long form sort of poetic world, because each person, you can really go on for a long time about every person on this planet, and I think we need to take in a little bit more, just from everybody that we meet.
I think so too. And you're really seeing it online as well. I was listening to a talk just the other day, and she was talking about how children, especially, are getting these little snippets of things about depression and anxiety and toxicity and red versus blue and all of these other topics. And they're, like you said, summing it up and actually like diagnosing themselves and each other based on very little information,
Wow.
that they're not getting the whole broad scope of everything, just this little snippet. And that's what they're making their decisions on.
Mm. Well, and as an educator, I've been teaching for 27 years now, and it's really interesting because when at the very beginning of my career, just teaching at Marymount, for example, I taught at Marymount for, I think, 16 years, and at the beginning of my stay there, there would maybe be 1 or 2 students who told me that they were on behavioral meds or who identified themselves as suffering from depression and things like that. But the numbers, that's, I teach at a lot of different schools, the numbers of how many young people come up and tell me that they have these issues, it went from like 1 or 2 students in a class of 32 to like half the class, and I think my feeling is we're diagnosing young people. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, or anything like that, but just as a teacher, what I observe is we're diagnosing kids, especially with issues, saying, "Oh, well, you suffer from these issues, so you need to be medicated." But actually, what it seems to me is, as our society, as we're bombarded through the phones with all of this scare tactic media,
Mm-hmm.
I feel anxious too. When I'll be feeling good, and then I'll get some sort of scroll on my phone, and then before you know it, my heart is racing, and I'm short of breath, and my mind is going a mile a minute. I'm worrying about my child, and the future. And it seems to me that their natures are actually reacting in a healthy way to problems in our society. And instead of doing the difficult work of healing our society, we'd rather just give people medication, you know.
Right. That's so true. And so many people are waking up to their emotions and allowing themselves to feel and actually go a little bit deeper, like go within themselves and take a big look. And at the same time, having sort of a broader worldview picture of what's going on in society and seeing, where things need to change in order to kind of open up to allow people to be able to have these feelings and be authentic, within themselves.
And so you feel that that we are coming to a more emotionally expressive place?
Yes. And what's happening is, these little snippets are being put in place for the younger generation, but also opens up a door for, I think, when they get older, where they'll be able to have these broader conversations as well.
Well,
But
that's
I agree with you that, a lot of people are being diagnosed and medicated when in reality, we should be having discussions about it instead and letting you know it's okay. You don't need to be diagnosed or put in a box like we were saying before, how everybody's just put in a box. I think that we like to compartmentalize things as a society. Excuse my tongue twister there.
well, especially now, because I think that I don't know that we were always like that, but that's just something that it's like we want everything fast and everything categorized easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think that people are really like that.
No, we're not really a let's solve it and move on thing like we've been treated. Yeah. And the fear mongering doesn't help at all. And everybody is linked in these days, which doesn't help. The best thing that I found for myself personally is just detaching, unplugging.
Yeah, unplugging is really important. I find it to be really funny that like a lot of the billionaires, who sort of got rich off of this technology, you find out that they have like they don't have a phone, but they can because they can afford not to have one, right? Everybody
Right.
else has to have one. But when you're rich enough, you cannot have it, and you hear them saying, "Oh, life is so much better without it." It's like, yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. And they
you know
don't give their children these technologies either.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Bill Gates, I think, said don't allow your kid to have a phone until they're 14 or something
Mm-hmm.
like that because
Yeah.
it's really detrimental. So it's interesting. And they're kind of aware of the problems with their own products.
What's being created and trickling down to our youth, right? Oh, yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about Fancifool. So tell us what is Fancifool and where did you get the inspiration for the show?
Well, Fanciful is 4 shows, actually. So I've got Fanciful, the original, which I played on Vashon at the beginning of February, and then Fanciful Sex Edition, which I played on Vashon at the end of February, and then I have Fanciful Folks and Fanciful Kids. And so the original and the kids shows I've been doing for a long time. All of my shows come with educational outreach programming, and I have a very extensive workshop menu of things that I teach. And so venues that hire the shows can also get all of these workshops. I play a lot of universities, community centers, and things like that with those. But so the inspiration for the pieces actually came from when I was an actor in New York and I was auditioning, and I was working teaching, but between auditions and things, you have a lot of downtime, and New York is a wonderful place to be sort of you're a pedestrian with everybody. Everybody's sort of hanging out on the streets. And so I would be standing in line somewhere or on the subway or in parks, and just sitting around waiting between appointments. And people would come up and talk to me. And I had some amazing conversations where, you know, people were sort of opening up to me about their feelings, sharing some of the deepest secrets of their heart, really. I had so many people in the midst of these conversations, which I didn't instigate. They seemed miraculous, really, to me.
No.
But in the midst, they would say, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. I've never said this out loud before. And so it happened to me a few times, and I thought, oh, wow, that was beautiful, and it happened a few more times. I was like, wow, this is a coincidence. And then it started happening hundreds of times and hundreds
Wow.
and hundreds of times, like every time I sat down. And so then I was like, okay, well, this is obviously a blessing, a miraculous phenomenon that's happening to me. And I think it's supposed to be work. So how can I make work about this? And so the original work, I there were so many different things that people seem to be talking about, but I sort of narrowed it down to, what people I met on the street were trying to express is something like how they feel under corporatism, where they're kind of being, sort of summed up for their productivity and then like used up and then discarded, kind of like Kleenex, right? And they were saying things like, but what do I do with my feelings in the midst of this? What do I do with my yearnings? What do I do? And then also concerns for, feeling helpless around concerns for the environment, and the fact that they have no control over what's being done to their city because it's being sort of bought up and redistributed by the super wealthy, and so
Mhm.
these were kind of things that people from really all walks of life were sharing with me. I met some really kind of wealthy, well-to-do people also who've just felt this sense of sort of unnamed alienation, and loneliness, especially loneliness. I mean, that's a huge thing, and it's interesting when you meet hundreds of people on the streets of New York, all of whom think they're the only one who feels lonely. And so you start thinking, well, how can I let these people know that they're not alone, that everybody feels lonely? And if we
Mhm.
all realize everyone feels lonely, it's not going to be too hard to get together. So that was
Right.
the original impetus. But then there were also some other subjects that seemed to be really important, sex and sexuality being one, and also democracy and multiculturalism, especially since in recent years, there have been some real moves to kind of destroy our democracy and to become a capitalist nation, but not necessarily a democratic one, right? Not a country run by the people and for the people, anymore.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to do those things specifically, to deal with things, for example, like on campus sexual violence, and accepting of people with different kinds of sexuality, things like that. So I wanted to do the show that's specifically for that, which is Sex Edition. And then I did Folks, which is that's going to premiere. Actually, I'm still working on that. It's going to premiere at the Marsh Theater in San Francisco.
Awesome.
We're doing a residency there starting this month. So
And
I'm very
Sex Edition is the one that you did, the little intimate setting here on Vashon. Can you share a little bit
Yes.
about that?
So David Godsey at Open Space Vashon brought me to the island. We met at the APAP conference in New York City, and he's the one who created the little space. He used pipe and drape to create this beautiful, intimate atmosphere that looked kind of like a circus ring. Um, and then he made a little foyer as well. So we created a little seduction scene. So you'd enter this little foyer area that was lit, all dim, lit with string lights and a beautiful sort of glowing heart and a little table with candles and chocolates. So it sort of feels like if you come home and your lover is doing the rose petals and candlelight seduction scene. And then you'd come into the main playing area where one of my clown characters was serenading you on the violin. And so when you're coming in, it already feels very romantic. And hopefully, the feeling is that everybody feels loved. And that was the sort of the pre-show setup, and then we go through the show, which is funny and ridiculous, but also I think very touching, where we can talk about how to love each other, you know, how to respect each other's wishes during sex, consent, and also the fact that sex is a spiritual experience,
Mhm.
and that it even says that in some of the religious texts that we think of as saying that sex is sinful. If we really read them carefully, we find out that they're actually not saying that maybe people who want to control society, you know, have told us that. But if we really look at the texts, um, the idea that sex is beautiful and sacred is actually all through those texts, especially the Old Testament and the Talmud, things like that. We talk about Tantra, things like that, so we can have a spiritual connection. And I think that this is especially important for young people now because we are very mute about sex in terms of talking about it in our societies. We can't talk about it. And yet they
Mhm.
go online and they can just see every kind of pornography at the touch of a button,
Yeah.
which is a very strange, porn tends to be a very, very strange depiction of sex. Very often it's really degrading to women especially, but not only women. There's a lot of really just crazy stuff you can watch really easily. And the thing that you can't find easily is eroticism, real seduction, real flirtation, and sort of love and romance and respect. Those things are not easy to find. But you can find any kind of just easy, licentious porn in seconds. Which
Yeah.
is and so there are stats about we've got 10-year-olds nationwide who are reporting that they suffer from porn addiction. Some of them report that they suffer from depression due to porn addiction. Like little
Wow.
kids in elementary school are having these problems. And so if they're going to learn about it like that, I think we have to offer them something. It's like, look, guys, if you're going to do a thing, do it upright. You know, get your birthright, which is, a wonderful lovemaking can be a wonderful spiritual experience, which we can even glimpse the divine according to tantric principles.
Yes. Yeah, having studied tantric principles, I agree. And I'm super excited that more people are having these conversations about sacred sexuality, healthy sex, respectful sex, setting up sacred space, consent, as you were saying. What's one of your favorite characters in that particular show and why?
Well, I mean, one of my favorite characters that I've done, some of my characters I do a lot and they sort of weigh in on different subjects. And then some of them are more portraits that show up only once. But my character, Elsie Easton, is a one that I love her. She's a pretend dame of the British stage. When you first meet her in Sex Edition, she's drunk after a party, and so she talks about sort of how things like intoxication make us more comfortable to express our sexuality. And she also talks about, the fact that more mature women are seen as invisible in American society,
Mm-hmm.
and she says, on the one hand, this gives her the freedom to ogle someone's tush and they don't even notice. But on the other hand, it's quite wrong. I mean, that's me. She doesn't say that. She has some funny dialogue that suggests that, but it really is a big question. If you go to other countries, you see women who mature all the way up into their 90s and they have sex appeal and they
Mm-hmm.
they dress beautifully, and you can tell they feel like they're erotic people and they still live that part of their lives. And for some reason in America, it's like you start to approach 40 and people just like, you're scrapped and you're replaced by somebody else.
Yeah, it's really interesting how irrelevant you become over 50.
Mm. Yeah, and
You
it's quite
as
wrong.
me. Yeah.
Women are extremely sexy, all the way. And I think, sex appeal changes. It changes from like that sort of ripe peach thing to more of a knowledge of eroticism and a wisdom in sexuality. And I think women become more erotic and more fascinating,
Mhm.
if we allow them to, as they get older.
Yes. And I know women specifically who are in their 70s and 80s who are still luscious and juicy and sensual and sexual. It's a beautiful thing to aspire to know that, okay, just because we've reached midlife doesn't mean that this aspect ends. It actually opens and grows and kind of blossoms even more later in life than
Exactly,
it did
blossoms
in the
more.
beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I like that you bring consent into it because this is a hot topic right now, consent, consensual sex. So how do you portray that in your show?
Well, I haven't. I'm sort of working with that a little bit more. I haven't actually hit that point because I don't. One of the things that I really is important to me is I don't want the work to seem preachy. I want it to be exciting and inspiring and
Mm-hmm.
touching, funny. But I don't want it to be like this is what you should do. But my this show is going to come with workshops that deal with that directly, especially geared towards university campuses. And I've
Awesome.
actually done a few of the workshops already. So it's we're using ballroom styles, what we could call ballroom archetype
Hmm.
follow, right? And everybody tries both. All the men try both, all the women try both, leading and following. And this really gives us the beautiful thing that ballroom dance can give us if we do it right is it can give us how to tell whether we're right for each other, first of all, whether there is an erotic charge, how to feel each other's desires and what, the subtleties of moving together and sensing each other. And we can find consent there that has less to do with politics and less to do with fear and more to do with, I think I tend to believe in the basic goodness of people, you know,
Hmm.
and I think that most of the time, people want to have a wonderful time together and they don't want the other person to be hurt. My feeling is a lot of the time those things happen by mistake, by misunderstanding, by overconsumption of porn, right? I
Yeah.
think we can get a really bad idea about consent and also pleasure from watching porn, from watching people really fake it,
Yeah.
in a way that is just bizarre, right? But when we come together and we try to sense, how can I lead this person? How can I give this person this message of where I want them to go, but in a way where it's going to feel good? Because that's the whole thing,
Hmm.
especially if you do something like tango, right? Tango is all about giving a person pleasure and being open to receiving that pleasure from the other person, and so I want to feel the lead because I know I'm going to have pleasure. And then how do I give the lead, to the person, meeting them where they're at, feeling where they already are, so I can take them to some place that's going to be pleasurable. And it's a wonderful way to open up a conversation that's, you know, that gets us excited
Yeah.
rather than it's like, oh gosh, I got to remember no means no. No, it does, but you know, there are ways to do it that don't spoil your evening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that is brilliant.
Oh, well, thank
That is brilliant. Just as a energy healer and someone who has, worked with sacred sexuality and practiced like just basic exercises where you're trying to learn like give and take and receive, all of these different areas and the subtleties that you can learn during partner dance. I love partner dancing. So, and the subtleties that you can learn, just your basic, like, what does it feel like when I'm trying to follow? What does it feel like when I'm trying to lead? Do I like, you know, leading? Do I like following? What are the social cues that I'm getting from the person that I'm dancing with can easily transfer over, into lovemaking, like where you're actually paying attention to what cues the person is giving you instead of already having a preconceived notion in your head about what it's supposed to look like and going for it when the person might not even, be open to whatever you're going for.
you.
Right. And this can be
Yeah.
just as simple as a kiss. Right. Because I think everybody can say they've been kissed when, they weren't giving social cues that, yes, I want to be kissed.
Mhm.
Right. Where, there's an idea, I'm just going to go for it without, feeling the energy of the person and having their energy kind of reciprocate that they're open to this kind of engagement. Right. So being in that dance with each other, I think that's amazing. Where did you initially come up with that idea? I think it's fantastic.
Well, it's in there. The thing that I'm hoping there's some wonderful programs, in the schools in New York that have been trying to bring ballroom dancing back for young people
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. And the thing is that these dances, there are so many from all over the world that have a similar lead follow relationship that really hand us courtship. And that's part of why, young people go to dances and they learn these styles because it is really helping them along. And like you say, it can lead right into lovemaking. They're designed to do that. Do you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so the intelligence is already in there. And the thing that's so wonderful about them is that we really experience how deep relaxation is something that we have to have in order to be sensitive to the other. And one of the problems that is really in the forefront, I think, of everything that's going wrong with us now is we just live in this state of extreme tension and
Hmm.
mental anxieties, which also breed more physical tensions, right? The relationship, I mean, obviously you study these things as well, the relationship between physical and mental tensions, and it just accumulating and accumulating and accumulating. We're accelerating in a sense, and that's part of why I think we seem to lose time. The days seem to go by faster and faster and faster because of how we're living. But if we come back to the breath and deep relaxation, then we are given back sort of our life, our birthright of experiencing our life. And that's one thing that if it puts it in front of you, whether you want to experience deep relaxation or not, whether you're like, I'm not going to
Hmm.
do breathing exercises, whatever. If you're trying ballroom, styles, tensions really make the physical communication for lead follow impossible. You have to be relaxed and open. We talk about an ear in the center of the body to hear the other. And it's interesting because just like in tantric principles where they say that, we each have both the masculine and the feminine is inside of one and the masculine inside of the other, but we each manifest both. You can feel that in lead follow as well. The leader has to also be following, right? Because you have to read where the partner is. You have to know where the partner's balance is. You have to be able to tell if you feel the partner tense from fear, pull back, right? That's not going well. Or if they're shrinking away from the touch, like, how can I be in my hands where the person is enjoying my touch, feels comfortable, and the likewise the follower is letting the person also know, what is and is not okay and where they are always in space, and so it one lives inside of the other. So it's been clear to me that that's why we have these forms for a long time. But since we've kind of lost them, I think we have to bring them back and sort of couching it in a let's learn about consent and healthy sexual relationships. I think is a beautiful way to present it again,
Hmm.
so that we can really appreciate it and start doing it. I think I would really like to see people demanding more clubs where they play the kind of music that you can do ballroom dancing to, all the different styles, whether it's salsa or mambo or bachata or swing or tango. There's so many different kinds of really fun partner dancing that helps us with eroticism so much.
Good idea. I'll help you.
Great.
Let's bring it back.
The more the merrier.
Yes. We'll have to bring you back to Vashon too, so you can
Yeah.
teach this wonderful workshop and maybe do um, uh, sex addiction or the sex addition. I can't talk today. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for
We're
sure.
on the larger stage instead of just in the intimate setting. Because
Well, I think
audiences really have go ahead.
it's good for an intimate setting anyway. I mean,
Yes.
I think it plays very well in smaller spaces, not necessarily as small as we had, which limited the seating a great deal.
Hmm.
But always a feeling of intimacy. I think that's going to be something that I'm always talking about with venues, is how we can create a sense of intimacy when people walk in, so that they already start to feel that they're loved, and that they're in a place where they can let those parts of themselves open.
Nice. I like that. I heard you say in a recent interview, and you said this a little bit earlier too, love makes things better. When we respect each other, sex is better.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And I agree. Like, how do you bring that into your show? And what's your personal experience with that?
Well, it comes into the show in various subtle ways from what different characters are saying when they're talking about their experience. But the other thing I say that in my advertising, it's better, sex is better when we love and respect one another. But I think the thing that should also be in there is it's better when we love and respect ourselves. Because I think that, some of the problems that we're seeing among young people when they're sort of being robbed of their courtship and their pleasure is the social media thing is kind of breeding low self-esteem. And it's suggesting to them that they have to change themselves in order to please some unknown overlord or something, like you have to be, no wrinkles, and you have to change your nose if your nose isn't right, and you have to put the right filter, and you have to talk a certain way, and you have to say all the buzzwords, and you have to dress a certain way, and in order to be an influencer, or whatever that kind of jargon is that they're feeding to us through these machines, and our young people are being very influenced by this. They're feeling, for the most part, people I've spoken to, that they have to participate in this, and that it breeds a low self-esteem, that I don't think they necessarily realize is happening. And especially when you're a young person, just inherently beautiful, because that's the way our young people are, right? Thinking about getting a nose job and a breast augmentation or lips, or all this stuff that it's just like, oh well, I have to do that because I have this prototype I have to live up to. It's really breeding a huge amount of low self-esteem, in males and females, and everything in between, across the board. They just feel like they're not good enough and they're not enough. And I think that really leads to poor treatment of oneself, leads to poor treatment of the other. Feeling like I'm worthless or whatever is going to lead me to try to, either make myself feel bigger by putting somebody else down, or inevitably my treatment of myself is going to come out and be my treatment of the other person. So we have to try to build ourselves up. If you look at advertising from back in the day, a lot of it is geared towards males, but and it would present a female to create an ad for the male gaze, right? And yet it's interesting, even the difference in the way it treated the male gaze. It would be like, sir, for your discerning taste, we present this gorgeous lady, in an elegant evening gown, who's handing you these cigars, whereas now it's like, this chick is stupid enough she'd even do it with you. That's kind of what the ad seems to be saying. It puts the woman down, in order to put the man down as well, to say you're both juvenile idiots, and we're kind of buying that. And we're also, there's an infantilization of sexuality, where people have to behave like little kids, and I don't believe we can have any kind of sexual satisfaction when we are constantly behaving like little kids. We have to be mature adults to experience our mature, full sexuality, And my feeling is that probably has to do with, as our economy is kind of being consolidated to sort of, we have owners, like maybe 10, 15 people who actually own, all of society. The idea that, well, let's make everybody children because it'll make them easier to sort of control and influence them. It seems to me that that's logical, that might be something that's deliberately put into rhetoric, and we're being encouraged to do that. But I think it would be fairly easy to just see that and refuse.
That would be nice. Right. Yeah, it's amazing what they try to normalize, just regular television, what they're streaming to us all the time. It's unfortunate. And that perception is really skewed. And you bring perception fully into your performances, like kind of spotlighting. I've heard different perceptions for different characters throughout the show. Can you talk a little bit about that identity piece and that perception piece that you really bring into the show to be able to convey your message?
What aspects of identity and perception? I'm sorry, I
How
didn't.
you bring in the different characters and kind of highlight these different aspects of life for your viewers.
Um, well, I mean, I've got some different portraits. You know, like there's one that's a heterosexual man who, out of the blue, finds himself attracted to, or even infatuated with another man, and he talks about how different that experience is than he thought it was going to be, you know, because he realizes that a personality can be nuanced, and he says, it was different than I ever thought. It was like seeing everything that I find beautiful in another human being described in that medium, you know. And
Mm,
so it's very, what's important to me is nuance, especially in this world where we seem to be encouraged to identify our sexuality, right? Well, how do you identify?
right.
And I respect people who want to say what they identify with. The thing is that I think sexuality and sensuality and eroticism is kind of more like a color wheel, you know, how, like, well, are you a lesbian? Like, well, I don't know who's in the room. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it really, to me, it's relational because I don't know what I'm capable of feeling. People walk in and out of my life, and I feel all kinds of different things, you know. I'm married, so I'm gonna like be. I have to, agree with my partner what we're gonna work out, to sort of express our sexual proclivities or whatever. Like those are things that are kind of technical. But in terms of my feelings, I feel like what our sexuality really is fluid and it's changing all the time, And the thing that I think is also really current now is the tantric principles, again, that say that we both have masculine and feminine physical polarities of the body. We're already both, you know and so the potentials for how we can manifest are really infinite. They're sort of as many different relationships that we can have with, that's how much our sexuality can manifest. We don't always have to do the act with everybody, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that there isn't an erotic charge somehow there, if we can allow it. And I think also, if we can allow these things without feeling ashamed of them, if we can just allow them, like this guy in the show, you know this is based on a couple of different real accounts that I've heard from people. Not It's not based on one.
Hmm.
But the guy is pretty open, and he's just compassionate with himself. He's honest with himself, as he says in the monologue, and he said, I had these feelings, and I was touched, and I'll never be the same. And it opened up more possibilities. It didn't really. He didn't start acting on it. He doesn't, but he just acknowledges that he has this, you know, and I feel like if we can just allow those things to kind of be, we can have a more kind of erotic and sensuous experience of being alive. It's just more full, and then we won't necessarily experience the kind of frustration of not having a partner that a lot of young people, it's like, I need.
Hmm.
If we get other kinds of satisfaction, the kind that isn't always from a physical interaction, but from an imagination or an energetic or emotional interaction, if we can get little bits of charge all the time, you know, I think we will be less frustrated, and less sort of that mental kind of psychosis that a lot of us are having now, where it's like, I'm attracted to this person, therefore they owe me sex. There's a movement among some young men, especially in this country now, that I do mention in the show, that is pretty militant about that, and it gets really dangerous. But I think part of that is the idea of masculinity puts them in such a tight box,
Hmm.
that they they see someone they're attracted to and they just become obsessed with how frustrated it makes them feel. And also there's a confusion, which I also mentioned in the show, that breeds the confusion that the person I'm attracted to is doing it to me, rather
Mm,
than the awareness that my nature tells me I'm attracted to that person, but actually it's me I have to deal with. It's my body, it's my physiognomy, it's my mentality that tells me I'm attracted. That person might not even realize that I'm here. They're just walking by, you know. And some of that, especially if I feel those frustrations and then I get in a chat room, you know, with 1,000 other people who also feel that way, then that can breed some really serious social problems.
wow, I'm really happy you brought up that distinction. Um, because I almost want to like go back and have you repeat that whole thing again because it's so worth listening to again. Everybody just rewind this part and go back and listen to that whole thing over again. Because it's so true, you know, how it's our attraction is about us. It's not necessarily about the other person. And as you were saying, like we get these sexual charges, but that doesn't mean we need to act on them. You know, there is a place within us where we can actually transform that sexual energy within ourselves and use it for, you know, the goodness of our life personally. Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing that up. What would you like our listeners to know about your show and what you're trying to convey to the world?
Well, I mean, I think I've said a lot of it. Sorry, I do tend to be long-winded, so if that was too
That's
much.
beautiful. No, not too much at all.
But I mean, in terms of the show and what might make it powerful is it to do with a larger issue as well. I think we need to get in the room with each other physically, because what happens when we're actually live with each other physically is we have such a more full and a richer experience of each other. We have an energetic experience of each other. We have an emotional experience. We have the feeling of being with others. And this can put us in a place where we return to sanity, where if we're alone with our phone or if we're alone with our laptop, we can go into this sort of, we can spin out mentally and not realize it, you know. And so that's why you know, I've chosen a medium of solo theater to get the word out. It's like, well, that's not the way to get the word out, you know. Get on the phone and get 4 million followers. The thing is that I'd rather have a larger audience than 5 people, but even if I'm only in the room with like 5 people, the difference is I'm in contact with the whole person, and I can have a real effect, you know, and we can affect each other. They can also affect me. And then we create this kind of magnetism together that can then bring other people, because that sense of unity, you know, when there's a charge, there's an electricity. Science even tells us that feeling of magic in a theater is literally our heartbeats synchronize when we're together in a group like that. That actually happens. So it's not just our imagination. That feeling is like, wow, I felt that magical feeling. It's real, you know. And I think that is the source of our healing. We have to put down the phone, or I guess bring it, you know, but get in the room together, breathe with each other, look into each other's eyes, get a more full experience of the other. And that way we're going to experience our real unity. These little, really trivial squabbles that are separating us now are going to melt away. And we're going to remember again that we're one people. So yeah, let's get in the room together. And if people have an opportunity to see this particular show, please tell your friends and come and let's get in the room together around this subject matter live with this show. On the other hand, anything you can do to get together with other people physically, to commune with others in a real way, in real life, that's always going to be wonderfully powerful, and that benefits me and everyone.
I love that. Thank you, Ananda.
Thank you.
And how can people find your tour dates for Fancifool?
Yeah, it's really bad. I don't actually have them on my website right now, but you can reach out to me, you know, follow the show Fancifool on Facebook. You can follow me, Ananda Bena-Weber, on Facebook and Instagram. And I do tend to post those things. I haven't been putting the tour dates up because the tour doesn't necessarily take me anywhere that's near anything else. So I've just been sort of putting it up to those communities, but I should absolutely put a list of my tour dates up, so that, look for that. But until then, Ananda Bena-Weber, you can friend me on Facebook or Instagram, and we can keep in touch that way. Or also Fancifool is also on Facebook.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks for sharing that, Ananda. And what is a little jewel that you would like to leave us with today as we close out the show?
Well, I think that keeping in mind, if you feel lonely, keeping in mind you're not the only one. So many of us are feeling lonely now, and being open to other people can yield magical fruits. Just keep in mind that a stranger is a friend you haven't met yet.
That's beautiful, Ananda. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Thanks. And thank you everyone for joining us. Again, I'm Liz Peterson, and this is Raise the Vibe with Liz. And you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Raise the Vibe with Liz. And my website is lizshealingtouch.com. Thank you everyone for joining us. And remember to get out there and raise the vibe. Have a great day, everyone. Bye. Thanks, Nanda.